Preface of Zanzibar Tales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Phil Chenevert. Zanzibar Tales by George W. Bateman. To my readers. 30 years ago, Central Africa was what people who are fond of airing their learning would call a terra incognita. Today, its general characteristics are pretty well known. Then as now, the little island of Zanzibar, situated just south of the equator on the east coast, was the starting place of all expeditions into the interior, and Unguja, the big town of that island, the place where the preparations for plunging into the unknown were made. At that period, these expeditions consisted, almost without exception, of caravans loaded with beads and cotton cloth, which were exchanged among the inland tribes for elephants' tusks and slaves. For Unguja boasted the only and the last open slave market in the world then. The few exceptions were a would-be discoverer now and then, or a party of rich white men going to hunt big game, that is, traveling hundreds, aye, thousands of miles, and enduring many hardships, for the momentary pleasure of holding a gun in such a position that when they pulled the trigger, the bullet hit such a prominent mark as an elephant or a lion, which was living in its natural surroundings and interfering with no one. Between you and me, I don't mind remarking that many of their expeditions ended, on their return to Unguja, in the purchase of a few elephants' tusks and wild animal skins in the bazaars of that thriving city, after the method pursued by unsuccessful anglers in civilized countries. But even the most successful of these hunters, by reason of having followed the few beaten paths known to their guides, never came within miles of such wonderful animals as those described by the tribesmen from the very center of the Dark Continent. If you have read any accounts of adventure in Africa, you will know that travelers never mention animals of any kind that are gifted with the faculty of speech, or gazelles that are overseers for native princes, or hares that eat flesh. No, indeed, only the native-born know of these, and judging by the immense and rapid strides civilization is making in those parts, it will not be long before such wonderful specimens of zoölogy will be extinct as the ichthyosaurus, dinornis, and other poor creatures who never dreamed of the awful names that would be applied to them when they were too long dead to show their resentment. As to the truth of these tales, I can only say that they were told to me, in Zanzibar, by negroes whose ancestors told them to them, who had received them from their ancestors, and so back, so that the praise for their accuracy, or the blame for their falsity, lies with the first ancestor who set them going. You may think uncivilized negroes are pretty ignorant people, but the white man, who is supposed to have first told the story of the house that Jack built, was a mighty poor genius compared to the unknown originator of Goso the teacher, who found even inanimate things that were endowed with speech, which the pupils readily understood and were not astonished to hear, while Puss in Boots was not one half so clever as the gazelle that ran things for Hamdani. It would be a severe task to rattle off Goso as you do the house that Jack built. Don't stumble over the names in these tales. They are very easy. Every one is pronounced exactly as it is spelled, and the accent is always on the last syllable but one, as Punda, the donkey, Hamdani, etc. Finally, if the perusal of these tales interests you as much as their narration and translation interested me, everything will be satisfactory. George W. Bateman. Chicago, August 1st, 1909. End of preface.
Chapter 1 of Zanzibar Tales. The Monkey, the Shark, and the Washerman's Donkey. Once upon a time, Kima, the monkey, and Papa, the shark, became great friends. The monkey lived in an immense mkuyu tree, which grew by the margin of the sea, half of its branches being over the water and half over the land. Every morning, when the monkey was breakfasting on the kuyu nuts, the shark would put in an appearance under the tree and call out, "Throw me some food, my friend," with which request the monkey complied most willingly. This continued for many months, until one day Papa said, "Keema, you have done me many kindnesses. I would like for you to go with me to my home, that I may repay you." "How can I go?" said the monkey. "We land beasts cannot go about in the water." "Don't trouble yourself about that," replied the shark. "I will carry you. Not a drop of water shall get to you." "Oh, all right then," said Mr. Keema. "Let's go." When they had gone about halfway, the shark stopped and said, "You are my friend. I will tell you the truth." "Why, what is there to tell?" asked the monkey with surprise. "Well, you see, the fact is that our sultan is very sick, and we have been told that the only medicine that will do him any good is a monkey's heart." "Well," exclaimed Keema, "you were very foolish not to tell me that before we started." "How so?" asked Papa. But the monkey was busy thinking up some means of saving himself, and made no reply. "Well," said the shark anxiously, "why don't you speak?" "Oh, I've nothing to say now. It's too late. But if you had told me this before we started, I might have brought my heart with me." "What? Haven't you your heart here?" "Huh!" ejaculated Keema. "Don't you know about us? When we go out, we leave our hearts in the trees, and go about with only our bodies. But I see you don't believe me. You think I'm scared. Come on, let's go to your home, where you can kill me and search for my heart in vain." The shark did believe him, though, and exclaimed, "Oh, no, let's go back and get your heart." "Indeed, no," protested Keema. "Let us go on to your home." But the shark insisted that they should go back, get the heart, and start afresh. At last, with great apparent reluctance, the monkey consented, grumbling sulkily at the unnecessary trouble he was being put to. When they got back to the tree, he climbed up in a great hurry, calling out, "Wait there, Papa, my friend, while I get my heart, and we'll start off properly next time." When he had got well up among the branches, he sat down and kept quite still. After waiting what he considered a reasonable length of time, the shark called, "Come along, Keema." But Keema just kept still and said nothing. In a little while he called again, "Oh, Keema, let's be going." At this, the monkey poked his head out from among the upper branches and asked, in great surprise, "Going? Where?" "To my home, of course." "Are you mad?" queried Keema. "Mad? Why, what do you mean?" cried Papa. "What's the matter with you?" said the monkey. "Do you take me for a washerman's donkey?" "What peculiarity is there about a washerman's donkey?" "It is a creature that has neither heart nor ears." The shark, his curiosity overcoming his haste, thereupon begged to be told the story of the washerman's donkey, which the monkey related as follows. A washerman owned a donkey of which he was very fond. One day, however, it ran away, and took up its abode in the forest, where it led a lazy life, and consequently grew very fat. At length, Sungura, the hare, by chance passed that way, and saw Punda, the donkey. Now, the hare is the most cunning of all beasts. If you look at his mouth, you will see that he is always talking to himself about everything. So when Sungura saw Punda, he said to himself, "My, this donkey is fat." Then he went and told Simba the lion. As Simba was just recovering from a severe illness, he was still so weak that he could not go hunting. He was consequently pretty hungry. Said Mr. Sungura, "I'll bring enough meat tomorrow for both of us to have a great feast, but you'll have to do the killing." "All right, good friend," exclaimed Simba joyfully. "You're very kind." So the hare scampered off to the forest, found the donkey, and said to her, in his most courtly manner, "Miss Punda, I am sent to ask your hand in marriage." "By whom?" simpered the donkey. "By Simba the lion." The donkey was greatly elated at this, and exclaimed, "Let's go at once. This is a first-class offer." They soon arrived at the lion's home, were cordially invited in, and sat down. Sungura gave Simba a signal with his eyebrow to the effect that this was the promised feast, and that he would wait outside. Then he said to Punda, "I must leave you for a while to attend to some private business. You stay here and converse with your husband that is to be." As soon as Sungura got outside, the lion sprang at Punda, and they had a great fight. Simba was kicked very hard, and he struck with his claws as well as his weak health would permit him. At last the donkey threw the lion down and ran away to her home in the forest. Shortly after, the hare came back and called, "Hiya, Simba, have you got it?" "I have not got it," growled the lion. "She kicked me and ran away. But I warrant you I made her feel pretty sore, although I'm not strong." "Oh, well," remarked Sungura, "don't put yourself out of the way about it." Then Sungura waited many days, until the lion and the donkey were both well and strong, when he said, "What do you think now, Simba? Shall I bring you your meat?" "Aye," growled the lion fiercely, "bring it to me. I'll tear it in 2 pieces." So the hare went off to the forest, where the donkey welcomed him and asked the news. "You are invited to call again and see your lover," said Sungura. "Oh dear," cried Punda, "that day you took me to him he scratched me awfully. I'm afraid to go near him now." "Ah, pshaw," said Sungura, "that's nothing. That's only Simba's way of caressing." "Oh, well," said the donkey, "let's go." So off they started again, but as soon as the lion caught sight of Punda, he sprang upon her and tore her in 2 pieces. When the hare came up, Simba said to him, "Take this meat and roast it. As for myself, all I want is the heart and the ears." "Thanks," said Sungura. Then he went away and roasted the meat in a place where the lion could not see him, and he took the heart and ears and hid them. Then he ate all the meat he needed and put the rest away. Presently the lion came to him and said, "Bring me the heart and ears." "Where are they?" said the hare. "What does that mean?" growled Simba. "Why, didn't you know this was a washerman's donkey? Well, what's that to do with there being no heart or ears?" "For goodness sake, Simba, aren't you old enough to know that if this beast had possessed a heart and ears, it wouldn't have come back the second time?" Of course the lion had to admit that what Sungura, the hare, said was true. "And now," said Kima to the shark, "you want to make a washerman's donkey of me. Get out of there and go home by yourself. You are not going to get me again, and our friendship is ended. Goodbye, Papa." End of chapter 1.
Chapter 2. The Hare and the Lion. One day Sungura, the hare, roaming through the forest in search of food, glanced up through the boughs of a very large calabash tree, and saw a great hole in the upper part of the trunk was inhabited by bees. Thereupon he returned to town in search of someone to go with him and help to get the honey. As he was passing the house of Buku, the big rat, that worthy gentleman invited him in. So he went in, sat down, and remarked, "My father has died, and has left me a hive of honey. I would like you to come and help me to eat it." Of course Buku jumped at the offer, and he and the hare started off immediately. When they arrived at the great calabash tree, Sungura pointed out the bees' nest and said, "Go on, climb up." So taking some straw with them, they climbed up to the nest, lit the straw, smoked out the bees, put out the fire, and set to work eating the honey. In the midst of the feast, who should appear at the foot of the tree but Simba the lion? Looking up and seeing them eating, he asked, "Who are you?" Then Sungura whispered to Buku, "Hold your tongue, that old fellow is crazy." But in a very little while Simba roared out angrily, "Who are you, I say? Speak, I tell you." This made Buku so scared that he blurted out, "It's only us." Upon this the hare said to him, "You just wrap me up in this straw, call to the lion to keep out of the way, and then throw me down. Then you'll see what will happen." So Buku, the big rat, wrapped Sungura the hare in the straw, and then called to Simba the lion, "Stand back! I'm going to throw this straw down, and then I'll come down myself." When Simba stepped back out of the way, Bookoo threw the straw, and as it lay on the ground, Soongoo'ra crept out and ran away while the lion was looking up. After waiting a minute or two, Simba roared out, "Well, come down, I say." And, there being no help for it, the big rat came down. As soon as he was within reach, the lion caught hold of him and asked, "Who is up there with you?" "Why," said Bookoo, "Soongoo'ra the hare. Didn't you see him when I threw him down?" "Of course I didn't see him," replied the lion, in an incredulous tone, and, without wasting further time, he ate the big rat, and then searched around for the hare, but could not find him. 3 days later Soongoo'ra called on his acquaintance Kobay the tortoise, and said to him, "Let us go and eat some honey." "Whose honey?" inquired Kobay cautiously. "My father's," Soongoo'ra replied. "Oh, all right, I'm with you," said the tortoise eagerly, and away they went. When they arrived at the great calabash tree, they climbed up with their straw, smoked out the bees, sat down, and began to eat. Just then Mr. Simba, who owned the honey, came out again, and, looking up, inquired, "Who are you up there?" Soongoo'ra whispered to Kobay, "Keep quiet." But when the lion repeated his question angrily, Kobay became suspicious, and said, "I will speak. You told me this honey was yours. Am I right in suspecting that it belongs to Simba?" So, when the lion asked again, "Who are you?" he answered, "It's only us." The lion said, "Come down then." And the tortoise answered, "We're coming." Now, Simba had been keeping an eye open for Soongoo'ra since the day he caught Bookoo, the big rat, and, suspecting that he was up there with Kobay, he said to himself, "I've got him this time, sure." Seeing that they were caught again, Soongoo'ra said to the tortoise, "Wrap me up in the straw. Tell Simba to stand out of the way, and then throw me down. I'll wait for you below. He can't hurt you, you know." "All right," said Kobay. But while he was wrapping the hare up, he said to himself, "This fellow wants to run away and leave me to bear the lion's anger. He shall get caught first." Therefore, when he had bundled him up, he called out, "Soongoo'ra is coming," and threw him down. So Simba caught the hare, and holding him with his paw, said, "Now, what shall I do with you?" The hare replied, "It's of no use for you to try and eat me. I'm awfully tough." "What would be the best thing to do with you, then?" asked Simba. "I think," said Soongoo'ra, "you should take me by the tail, whirl me around, and knock me against the ground. Then you may be able to eat me." So the lion, being deceived, took him by the tail and whirled him around. But just as he was going to knock him on the ground, he slipped out of his grasp and ran away, and Simba had the mortification of losing him again. Angry and disappointed, he turned to the tree and called to Kobay, "You come down too." When the tortoise reached the ground, the lion said, "You're pretty hard. What can I do to make you eatable?" "Oh, that's easy," laughed Kobay. "Just put me in the mud and rub my back with your paw until my shell comes off." Immediately on hearing this, Simba carried Kobay to the water, placed him in the mud, and began, as he supposed, to rub his back. But the tortoise had slipped away, and the lion continued rubbing on a piece of rock until his paws were raw. When he glanced down at them, he saw they were bleeding, and, realizing that he had again been outwitted, he said, "Well, the hare has done me today, but I'll go hunting now until I find him." So Simba, the lion, set out immediately in search of Soongoo'ra, the hare, and, as he went along, he inquired of every one he met, "Where is the house of Soongoo'ra?" But each person he asked answered, "I do not know." For the hare had said to his wife, "Let us remove from this house." Therefore the folks in the neighbourhood had no knowledge of his whereabouts. Simba, however, went along, continuing his inquiries, until presently one answered, That is his house on the top of the mountain." Without loss of time the lion climbed the mountain, and soon arrived at the place indicated, only to find that there was no one at home. This, however, did not trouble him. On the contrary, saying to himself, "I'll hide myself inside, and when Soongoo'ra and his wife come home I'll eat them both," he entered the house and lay down, awaiting their arrival. Pretty soon along came the hare with his wife, not thinking of any danger, but he very soon discovered the marks of the lion's paws on the steep path. Stopping at once, he said to Mrs. Soongoo'ra, "You go back, my dear. Simba the lion has passed this way, and I think he must be looking for me." But she replied, "I will not go back. I will follow you, my husband." Although greatly pleased at this proof of his wife's affection, Soongoo'ra said firmly, "No, no, you have friends to go to. Go back." So he persuaded her, and she went back. But he kept on, following the footmarks, and saw, as he had suspected, that they went into his house. "Ah," he said to himself, "Mr. Lion is inside, is he?" Then, cautiously going back a little way, he called out, "How do you do, house? How do you do?" Waiting a moment, he remarked loudly, "Well, this is very strange. Every day as I pass this place I say, 'How do you do, house?' and the house always answers, 'How do you do?' There must be someone inside today." When the lion heard this, he called out, "How do you do?" Then Soongoo'ra burst out laughing and shouted, "Oh, Mr. Simba, you're inside, and I'll bet you want to eat me. But first tell me where you ever heard of a house talking." Upon this the lion, seeing how he was fooled, replied angrily, "You wait until I get a hold of you, that's all." "Oh, I think you'll have to do the waiting," cried the hare, and then he ran away, the lion following. But it was of no use. Soongoo'ra completely tired out old Simba, who, saying, "That rascal has beaten me. I don't want to have anything more to do with him," returned to his home under the great calabash tree. End of chapter 2. The Hare and the Lion.
Chapter 3. The Lion, the Hyena, and the Rabbit. Once upon a time, Simba, the lion, Fisi, the hyena, and Kititi, the rabbit, made up their minds to go in for a little farming. So they went into the country, made a garden, planted all kinds of seeds, and then came home and rested quite a while. Then, when their crops should be about ripe and ready for harvesting, they began to say to each other, "Let's go over to the farm and see how our crops are coming along." So one morning early they started, and as the garden was a long way off, Kititi, the rabbit, made this proposition: "While we are going to the farm, let us not stop on the road. And if anyone does stop, let him be eaten." His companions, not being so cunning as he, and knowing that they could outwalk him, readily consented to this arrangement. Well, off they went, but they had not gone very far when the rabbit stopped. "Hullo," said Fisi, the hyena. "Kititi had stopped. He must be eaten." "That's the bargain," agreed Simba, the lion. "Well," said the rabbit, "I happen to be thinking." "What about?" cried his partners with great curiosity. "I'm thinking," said he, with a grave philosophical air, "about those two stones, one big and one little. The little one does not go up, nor does the big one go down." The lion and the hyena, having stopped to look at the stones, could only say, "Why, really, it's singular, but it's just as you say." And they all resumed their journey, the rabbit being by this time well rested. When they had gone some distance, the rabbit stopped again. "Aha," said Fisi. "Kititi has stopped again. Now he must be eaten." "I rather think so," assented Simba. "Well," said the rabbit, "I was thinking again." Their curiosity once more aroused, his comrades begged him to tell them his think. "Why?" said he. "I was thinking this. When people like us put on new coats, where do the old ones go?" Both Simba and Fisi, having stopped a moment to consider the matter, exclaimed together, "Well, I wonder." And the three went on, the rabbit having again had a good rest. After a little while, the hyena, thinking it about time to show off a little of his philosophy, suddenly stopped. "Here," growled Simba, "this won't do. I guess we'll have to eat you, Fisi." "Oh no," said the hyena, "I'm thinking." "What are you thinking about?" they inquired. "I'm thinking about nothing at all," said he, imagining himself very smart and witty. "Off jaw!" cried Keeteetee. "We won't be fooled that way." So he and Simba ate the hyena. When they had finished eating their friend, the lion and the rabbit proceeded on their way, and presently came to a place where there was a cave, and here the rabbit stopped. "Hmm!" ejaculated Simba. "I'm not so hungry as I was this morning, but I guess I'll have to find room for you, little Keeteetee." "Oh, I believe not," replied Keeteetee. "I'm thinking again." "Well," said the lion, "what is it this time?" Said the rabbit, "I'm thinking about that cave. In olden times our ancestors used to go in here and go out there, and I think I'll try to follow their footsteps." So he went in at one end and out the other end several times. Then he said to the lion, "Simba, old fellow, let's see you try to do that." And the lion went into the cave, but he stuck fast and could neither go forward nor back out. In a moment Keeteetee was on Simba's back and began eating him. After a little time the lion cried, "Oh, brother, be impartial. Come and eat some of the front part of me." But the rabbit replied, "Indeed, I can't come around in front. I'm ashamed to look you in the face." So having eaten all he was able to, he left the lion there, and he went and became sole owner of the farm and its crops. End of section 3. Recording by Candace Stellick, Dallas, Texas. Chapter 4. The Kites and the Crows. One day, Konguru, Sultan of the Crows, sent a letter to Mwewe, Sultan of the Kites, containing these few words: "I want you folks to be my soldiers." To this brief message, Mwewe at once wrote this short reply: "I should say not." Thereupon, thinking to scare Mwewe, the Sultan of the Crows sent him word: "If you refuse to obey me, I'll make war upon you." To which the Sultan of the Kites replied, "That suits me. Let us fight, and if you beat us, we will obey you. But if we are victors, you shall be our servants." So they gathered their forces and engaged in great battle. And in a little while it became evident that the crows were being badly beaten, as it appeared certain that, if something were not done pretty quickly, they would all be killed. One old crow named Goso suddenly proposed that they should fly away. Directly the suggestion was made, it was acted upon, and the crows left their homes and flew far away, where they set up another town. So, when the kites entered the place, they found no one there, and they took up their residence in Crowtown. One day, when the crows had gathered in council, Kongoro stood up and said, "My people, do as I command you, and all will be well. Pluck out some of my feathers and throw me into the town of Kites. Then come back and stay here until you hear from me." Without argument or questioning, the crows obeyed their sultan's command. Konguru had lain in the street but a short time, when some passing kites saw him and inquired threateningly, "What are you doing here in our town?" With many a moan he replied, "My companions have beaten me and turned me out of their town because I advised them to obey Mwewe, Sultan of the Kites." When they heard this, they picked up and took him before the Sultan, to whom they said, "We found this fellow lying in the street, and he attributes his involuntary presence in our town to so singular a circumstance that we thought you should hear his story." Konguru was then bidden to repeat his statement, which he did, adding the remark that, much as he had suffered, he still held to his opinion that Mwewe was his rightful sultan. This, of course, made a very favorable impression, and the sultan said, "You have more sense than all the rest of your tribe put together. I guess you can stay here and live with us." So Konguru, expressing much gratitude, settled down, apparently, to spend the remainder of his life with the kites. One day his neighbors took him to church with them, and when they returned home they asked him, "Who have the best kind of religion, the kites or the crows?" To which crafty old Konguru replied, with great enthusiasm, "Oh, the kites by long odds." This answer tickled the kites like anything, and Konguru was looked upon as a bird of remarkable discernment. When almost another week had passed, the Sultan of the Crows slipped away in the night, went to his own town, and called his people together. "Tomorrow," said he, "is the great annual religious festival of the kites, and they will all go to church in the morning. Go now and get some wood and some fire, and wait near their town till I call you. Then come quickly and set fire to the church." Then he hurried back to Mwewe's town. The crows were very busy indeed all that night, and by dawn they had an abundance of wood and fire at hand, and were lying in wait near the town of their victorious enemies. So in the morning every kite went to church. There was not one person left at home except old Konguru. When his neighbors called for him, they found him lying down. "Why," they exclaimed with surprise, "are you not going to church today?" "Oh," said he, "I wish I could, but my stomach aches so badly I can't move." And he groaned dreadfully. "Oh, poor fellow," said they, "you will be better in bed." And they left him to himself. As soon as everybody was out of sight, he flew swiftly to his soldiers and cried, "Come on, they're all in the church." And they all crept quickly but quietly to the church, and while some piled wood about the door, others applied fire. The wood caught readily, and the fire was burning fiercely before the kites were aware of their danger. But when the church began to fill with smoke, the tongues of flame shot through the cracks. They tried to escape through the windows. The greater part of them, however, were suffocated, or having their wings singed, and so were burned to death. Among them their sultan Mwewe, and Konguru and his crows got their old town back again. From that day to this, the kites fly away from the crows. End of chapter 4. The Kites and the Crows. Recording by Candace Stellig, Dallas, Texas.
Chapter 5. Goso, the Teacher. Once there was a man named Goso who taught children to read, not in a schoolhouse, but under a calabash tree. One evening, while Goso was sitting under the tree, deep in the study of the next day's lessons, Pa the gazelle climbed up the tree very quietly to steal some fruit, and in so doing shook off a calabash, which, in falling, struck the teacher on the head and killed him. When his scholars came in the morning and found their teacher lying dead, they were filled with grief. So, after giving him a decent burial, they agreed among themselves to find the one who had killed Goso, and put him to death. After talking the matter over, they came to the conclusion that the south wind was the offender, so they caught the south wind and beat it. But the south wind cried, "Here, I am Kusi, the south wind. Why are you beating me? What have I done?" And they said, "Yes, we know you are Kusi. It was you who threw down the calabash that struck our teacher Goso. You should not have done it." But Kusi said, "If I were so powerful, would I be stopped by a mud wall?" So they went to the mud wall and beat it. But the mud wall cried, "Here, I am Kiambaza, the mud wall. Why are you beating me? What have I done?" And they said, "Yes, we know you are Kiambaza. It was you who stopped Kusi, the south wind. And Kusi, the south wind, threw down the calabash that struck our teacher Goso. You should not have done it." But Kiambaza said, "If I were so powerful, would I be bored through by the rat?" So they went and caught the rat and beat it. But the rat cried, "Here, I am Panya the rat. Why are you beating me? What have I done?" And they said, "Yes, we know you are Panya. It was you who bored through Kiambaza, the mud wall, which stopped Kusi, the south wind, and Kusi, the south wind, threw down the calabash that struck our teacher Goso. You should not have done it." But Panya said, "If I were so powerful, would I be eaten by a cat?" So they hunted for the cat, caught it, and beat it. But the cat cried, "Here, I am Paka the cat. Why do you beat me? What have I done?" And they said, "Yes, we know you are Paka. It is you that eats Panya the rat, who bores through Kiambaza the mud wall, which stopped Kusi the south wind, and Kusi the south wind threw down the calabash that struck our teacher Goso. You should not have done it." But Paka said, "If I were so powerful, would I be tied by a rope?" So they took the rope and beat it. But the rope cried, "Here, I am Kamba the rope. Why do you beat me? What have I done?" And they said, "Yes, we know you are Kamba. It is you that ties Paka the cat, who eats Panya the rat, who bores through Kiambaza the mud wall, which stopped Kusi the south wind. And Kusi the south wind threw down the calabash that struck our teacher Goso. You should not have done it." But Kamba said, "If I were so powerful, would I be cut by a knife?" So they took the knife and beat it. But the knife cried, "Here, I am Kisu the knife. Why do you beat me? What have I done?" And they said, "Yes, we know you are Kisu. You cut Kamba the rope that ties Paka the cat, who eats Panya the rat, who bores through Kiambaza the mud wall, which stopped Kusi the south wind. And Kusi the south wind threw down the calabash that struck our teacher Goso. You should not have done it." But Kisu said, "If I were so powerful, would I be burned by the fire?" And they went and beat the fire. But the fire cried, "Here, I am Moto the fire. Why do you beat me? What have I done?" And they said, "Yes, we know you are Moto. You burn Kisu the knife that cuts Kamba the rope that ties Paka the cat, who eats Panya the rat, who bores through Kiambaza the mud wall, which stopped Kusi the south wind. And Kusi the south wind threw down the calabash that struck our teacher Goso. You should not have done it." But Moto said, "If I were so powerful, would I be put out by water?" And they went to the water and beat it. But the water cried, "Here, I am Magi the water. Why do you beat me? What have I done?" And they said, "Yes, we know you are Magi. You put out Moto the fire that burns Kisu the knife that cuts Kamba the rope that ties Paka the cat, who eats Panya the rat, who bores through Kiambaza the mud wall, which stopped Kusi the south wind. And Kusi the south wind threw down the calabash that struck our teacher Goso. You should not have done it." But Magi said, "If I were so powerful, would I be drunk by the ox?" And they went to the ox and beat it. But the ox cried, "Here, I am Ngombe the ox. Why do you beat me? What have I done?" And they said, "Yes, we know you are Ngombe. You drink Magi the water that puts out Moto the fire that burns Kisu the knife that cuts Kamba the rope that ties Paka the cat, who eats Panya the rat, who bores through Kiambaza the mud wall, which stopped Kusi the south wind. And Kusi the south wind threw down the calabash that struck our teacher Goso. You should not have done it." But Ngombe said, "If I were so powerful, would I be tormented by the fly?" And they caught a fly and beat it. But the fly cried, "Here, I am Inzi the fly. Why do you beat me? What have I done?" And they said, "Yes, we know you are Inzi. You torment Ngombe the ox, who drinks Magi the water, that puts out Moto the fire, that burns Kisu the knife, that cuts Kamba the rope, that ties Paka the cat, who eats Panya the rat, who bores through Kiambaza the mud wall, which stopped Kusi the south wind. And Kusi the south wind threw down the calabash that struck our teacher Goso. You should not have done it. But Inzi said, if I were so powerful, would I be eaten by the gazelle? And they searched for the gazelle, and when they found it, they beat it. But the gazelle said, Here, I am Pa the gazelle. Why do you beat me? What have I done? And they said, Yes, we know you are Pa. You eat Inzi the fly, that torments Ngombe the ox, who drinks Magi the water, that puts out Moto the fire, that burns Kisu the knife, that cuts Kamba the rope, that ties Paka the cat, who eats Panya the rat, who bores through Kiambaza the mud wall, which stopped Kusi the south wind. And Kusi the south wind threw down the calabash that struck our teacher Goso. You should not have done it. The gazelle, through surprise at being found out, and fear of the consequences of his accidental killing of the teacher while engaged in stealing, was struck dumb. Then the scholar said, Ah, he hasn't a word to say for himself. This is the fellow who threw down the calabash that struck our teacher Goso. We will kill him. So they killed Pa the gazelle and avenged the death of their teacher. End of chapter 5.
Chapter 6 of Zanzibar Tales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by D. Wyckoff. Zanzibar Tales by George W. Bateman. Chapter 6. The Ape, the Snake, and the Lion. Long, long ago there lived in a village called Kijiji a woman whose husband died, leaving her with a little baby boy. She worked hard all day to get food for herself and her child, but they lived very poorly and were most of the time half starved. When the boy, whose name was Mvulana, began to get big, he said to his mother one day, "Mother, we are always hungry. What work did my father do to support us?" His mother replied, "Your father was a hunter. He set traps, and we ate what he caught in them." "Oh," said Mvulana, "that's not work, that's fun. I too will set traps and see if we can't get enough to eat." The next day he went into the forest and cut branches from the trees, and returned home in the evening. The second day he spent making the branches into traps. The third day he twisted coconut fiber into ropes. The fourth day he set up as many traps as time would permit. The fifth day he set up the remainder of the traps. The sixth day he went to examine the traps, and they had caught so much game beside what they needed for themselves that he took a great quantity to the big town of Ngoja, where he sold it and bought corn and other things, and the house was full of food, and as this good fortune continued, he and his mother lived very comfortably. But after a while, when he went to his traps, he found nothing in them day after day. One morning, however, he found that an ape had been caught in one of the traps, and he was about to kill it when it said, "Son of Adam, I am Neani, the ape. Do not kill me. Take me out of this trap and let me go. Save me from the rain, that I may come and save you from the sun some day." So Mvulana took him out of the trap and let him go. When Neani climbed up in a tree, he sat on a branch and said to the youth, "For your kindness I will give you a piece of advice. Believe me, men are all bad. Never do a good turn for a man. If you do, he will harm you at the first opportunity." The second day Mvulana found a snake in the same trap. He started to the village to give the alarm, but the snake shouted, "Come back, son of Adam. Don't call the people from the village to come and kill me. I am Neoka the snake. Let me out of this trap, I pray you. Save me from the rain today, that I may be able to save you from the sun tomorrow if you should be in need of help." So the youth let him go, and as he went he said, I will return your kindness if I can, but do not trust any man. If you do him a kindness, he will do you an injury in return at the first opportunity." The third day, 'Mvoo found a lion in the same trap that had caught the ape and the snake, and he was afraid to go near it. But the lion said, "Don't run away. I am Simba Kongway, the very old lion. Let me out of this trap, and I will not hurt you. Save me from the rain, that I may save you from the sun if you should need help." So 'Mvoo believed him and let him out of the trap, and Simba Kongway, before going his way, said, "Son of Adam, you have been kind to me, and I will repay you with kindness if I can. But never do a kindness to a man, or he will pay you back with unkindness." The next day a man was caught in the same trap, and when the youth released him, he repeatedly assured him that he would never forget the service he had done him in restoring his liberty and saving his life. Well, it seemed that he had caught all the game that could be taken in traps, and 'Mvoo and his mother were hungry every day, with nothing to satisfy them as they had been before. At last he said to his mother one day, "Mother, make me 7 cakes of the little meal we have left, and I will go hunting with my bow and arrows." So she baked him the cakes, and he took them and his bow and arrows, and went into the forest. The youth walked and walked, but could see no game, and finally he found he had lost his way, and had eaten all his cakes but one, and he went on, not knowing whether he was going away from his home or toward it, until he came to the wildest and most desolate looking wood he had ever seen. He was so wretched and tired that he felt he must lie down and die, when suddenly he heard someone calling him, and looking up he saw Neani the ape, who said, "Son of Adam, where are you going?" "I don't know," replied 'Mvoo sadly. "I'm lost." "Well, well," said the ape, "don't worry. Just sit down here and rest yourself until I come back, and I will repay with kindness the kindness you once showed me." Then Neani went away off to some gardens, and stole a whole lot of ripe pawpaws and bananas, and brought them to 'Mvoo and said, "Here's plenty of food for you. Is there anything else you want? Would you like a drink?" And before the youth could answer, he ran off with the calabash and brought it back full of water. So the youth ate heartily, and drank all the water he needed, and then each said to the other, "Goodbye till we meet again," and went their separate ways. When 'Mvoo had walked a great deal farther without finding which way he should go, he met Simba Kongway, who asked, "Where are you going, son of Adam?" And the youth answered as dolefully as before, "I don't know. I'm lost." "Come, cheer up," said the very old lion, "and rest yourself here a little. I want to repay with kindness today the kindness you showed me on a former day." So 'Mvoo sat down. Simba Kongway went away, but soon returned with some game he had caught, and then he brought some fire, and the young man cooked the game and ate it. When he had finished he felt a great deal better, and they bade each other good-bye for the present, and each went his way. After he had traveled another very long distance, the youth came to a farm, and was met by a very, very old woman, who said to him, "Stranger, my husband has been taken very sick, and I am looking for some one to make him medicine. Won't you make it?" But he answered, "My good woman, I am not a doctor, I am a hunter, and never used medicine in my life. I cannot help you." When he came to the road leading to the principal city, he saw a well with a bucket standing near it, and he said to himself, "That's just what I want. I'll take a drink of nice well water. Let me see if the water can be reached." As he peeped over the edge of the well to see if the water was high enough, what should he behold but a great big snake, which directly it saw him said, "Son of Adam, wait a moment." Then it came out of the well and said, "How? Don't you know me?" "I certainly do not," said the youth, stepping back a little. "Well, well," said the snake, "I could never forget you. I am Neoka, whom you released from the trap. You know I said, 'Save me from the rain, and I will save you from the sun.' Now you are a stranger in the town to which you are going, therefore hand me your little bag, and I will place in it the things that will be of use to you when you arrive there." So 'Mvoo gave Neoka the little bag, and he filled it with chains of gold and silver, and told him to use them freely for his own benefit. Then they parted very cordially. When the youth reached the city, the first man he met was he whom he had released from the trap, who invited him to go home with him, which he did, and the man's wife made him supper. As soon as he could get away unobserved, the man went to the Sultan and said, "There is a stranger come to my house with a bag full of chains of silver and gold, which he says he got from a snake that lives in a well. But although he pretends to be a man, I know that he is a snake who has power to look like a man." When the Sultan heard this, he sent some soldiers who brought 'Mvoo and his little bag before him. When they opened the little bag, the man who was released from the trap persuaded the people that some evil would come out of it and affect the children of the Sultan and the children of the Vizier. Then the people became excited and tied the hands of 'Mvoo behind him. But the great snake had come out of the well and arrived at the town just about this time, and when he went and lay at the feet of the man who had said all those bad things about 'Mvoo, and when the people saw this, they said to that man, "How is this? There is the great snake that lives in the well, and he stays by you. Tell him to go away." But Neoka would not stir. So they untied the young man's hands, and tried in every way to make amends for having suspected him of being a wizard. Then the Sultan asked him, "Why should this man invite you to his home and then speak ill of you?" And 'Mvoo related all that had happened to him, and how the ape, the snake, and the lion had cautioned him about the results of doing any kindness for a man. And the Sultan said, "Although men are often ungrateful, they are not always so, only the bad ones. As for this fellow, he deserves to be put in a sack and drowned in the sea. He was treated kindly, and returned evil for good." End of chapter 6.